Hello everyone, I am Tacet, and today I'm going to be going over the event objectives for the Gems of War Sands of Time event, in which the Desert Worm is added to the game. So let's get into that. As far as the troop, it actually isn't horrible. It comes in with the red, yellow arcanes if you want to stock up on that for 300 each. As far as the troop, it's basically under the classification of all of the other worms. Basically the 8 mana cost troops that end up hitting the very last slot. However, it does have one small difference to it, and that is that it actually uses 2 different colors instead of 1, while having a 1 higher mana cost. Almost reminds me of a mix of like a fire lizard, which is a random enemy and is also red-yellow and creates 7 of its color, but also burns them, and it does that. And a rockworm, which are basically 1 lower mana cost, but they only use 1 color and feed into themselves. The basic premise of these, of course, are that they can potentially loop into themselves. Back in the day, these were among some of the better troops in the entire game. As it currently stands in the game, there are obviously much better gem spawners, and they tend to get left behind a little bit. However, it's definitely an interesting premise and might find its way occasionally. I think biggest thing holding it back, no natural mana start. That would have been cool to see with a slightly higher mana cost, but it does not have any. So you'd still only be able to get a very, very small amount off of like 20% or something, most realistically, in most of the teams that you would end up using it in. Overall, probably not going to be worth using beyond like early to mid game. However, if you do see it in an arena, definitely pick it up, especially this week with the 20%, as this actually would be a pretty good arena option. Though beyond that, in early mid game, it's probably not going to be touched much, even though it is still a good troop. I would love to see a variant of it for pretty much every single color. Not sure if they're going to get around to that, but it seems like they might. They like doing series of troops that are all somewhat similar, so but probably don't need to think of other ideas. But still good for some premises, and that does seem like one that would be nice to have it for. Anyways, as far as the event key drop table is concerned, we of course got ourselves some Drifting Sands this week. As far as what is specifically in the Drifting Sands drop table, if we go over to Kingdom and click over to Drifting Sands and then Show All, if you don't already have everything, it'll end up showing everything that is here. It is mostly a monster-based kingdom. As far as everything you see here, everything is available except for 4 troops, and those of course are the Deep Hive troops. The most noteworthy one, actually one of the better troops in the entire game, reside here. However, it's not an event key drop table. It is Queen Beatrix. She is not an event key drop table. She is obtained from throwing Chaos Shards at the Drifting Sands faction. However, really great great option. As far as the rest of the kingdom and what you might be going for, there's not really too much you can maybe try if you don't own both Scorpius and Shibanu. You can maybe try some event keys for one of the mythics. Scorpius has seen better days, but he is still good against any team that does not have immune to poison, being able to get those double kills. He also has Impervious into +1 to all brown allies, which early to mid game is actually not that bad, though this starts falling off the later you get into the game. Compared to his instant kill. And other than that, Shibanu Vespera, I haven't been using her much. However, she is still a good mana accumulation option. She can even solo battles in a sense, just because she has a good backup plan, particularly for like guild wars and such. However, she does get hard countered pretty bad by freeze, though almost every gem spawner in the game does end up having that slight issue. She also has a backup summon attached to her final trait. Overall, trait's pretty lackluster though. But overall, probably a week that you might end up skipping on or only throwing a few event keys unless you're like really going after one of those mythics for completionist sake. Maybe early on in the game, maybe picking up a rock spirit if you're like under level 500, particularly under level 200 if you just started the game in the last week or two. If you have a couple event keys laying around or getting some this week, rock spirit actually is a pretty good early game option, but obviously falls off later in the game due to how most boost ratios work. But overall, definitely a good week to just skip and not use any event keys. I think the weekly objectives does require you to use 2 event keys, and that's probably the only 2 event keys you should bother going for, as everything here is pretty dated and doesn't really get used too much, other than Beatrix. But she's actually from the Delve. So if you do want to get Beatrix, she's not in event keys. She's over in Deep Hive underneath the shards. So if you still need those 4 troops to go get the kingdom upgraded even further, you can end up getting it there. She's the only thing that is super relevant from that kingdom. Anyways, aside from that, we got the Wardlaw event. We got additional spell damage this week, which always great to see. I feel like these are a little bit easier normally than the Skull ones. Those Skull ones could still be pretty easy. There's 3 teams I'm actually going to be showing for it. The main one I've personally been using is just Spam King Mikhail. This ended up just seeming like it would work, and yeah, we've just been using it. Just using it with Priest, Scheme that +2 yellow, using Dawnbringer for the shield, and that little bit extra AoE damage, and Paladin is there basically for that extra yellow. However, he does occasionally get cleanup. Some of them have like a 20% reduction on spells or anything like that, and he can end up getting that nice little cleanup and be good to go with a single target. We do have mostly strikers and stuff like that for this event, which is very annoying. So we are kind of restricted to most options that hit 1 target. However, there are several options that can hit multiple, with King Mikhail being able to hit all of them, making him rather unique in this game mode, given that there aren't really much options that can do that. So definitely worth considering building around, especially if you have multiple of him, as you'd be able to get pretty good value. Unfortunately, you can't half mana start him, though. The other aspect of him does not come into his event, since it's a support troop that doesn't fall under either of those 2 categories. So you will have to go with 20% at max as far as additional stats for him to stack a bit of magic and just kind of keep spamming it, and you should pretty much be good to go. You just get it with all the extra modifier medals that you have from the event. And worst comes to worst, he does have enraged skulls, but you are going to primarily obviously be doing damage via your full AoE damage against the enemy. Overall, it seems like a pretty easy event. Most spell reduction ones do seem to be that way, especially when you have a decent AoE option, and Mikhail is decent at least. And I'm going to show a slightly cheaper one as well. Aside from that, as far as things that we got going on throughout the week, we got ourselves the faction today for Sunken Fleet. Sunken Fleet does have Mirage Queen, so if you haven't picked that up, you can pick that up whenever, but definitely worth considering. It's a really great option. It's honestly the best 50% mana start in the entire game by a pretty large margin, as it currently stands. Very, very strong to consider having. Aside from that, Wednesday we got ourselves the little mini mall. Thursday we got ourselves the class event for the Dervish class, which overall is a relatively underwhelming hero class. Its main gimmick, as far as the unique things that it has, it does actually have the highest dodge in the entire game at around a 40-something percent. I keep forgetting the exact percent, but it's a 30% and a 20%. However, they both trigger independently, so it's not a 50%. It's somewhere around 40-something. But yeah, he has the highest dodge in the game because the highest single value dodge is a 40%. So they might eventually add a Mythic that has like 50-60%, but as it currently stands, it is the highest dodge in the game. So it has that going for it. And aside from that, this Friday, we got ourselves a Vault event. I will be hunting for that Epic Volkey. I am so ridiculously dry on that Epic Volkey. We will end up finding it eventually at some point. There's really not much of a point. It's only like 3 times better than a normal Volkey. However, there is an achievement associated to it, and we still do not have it. So we'll be doing the grind this weekend and hopefully getting it. And if nothing else, we'll get a ton of loot along the way. There's a lot of gem-related resources that you can end up getting, and just useful things in general. Highly advise farming them, as they are the best time to ever be playing the game, as you get the most amount of value from doing so. So if you have some spare time this weekend, definitely worth considering. And the main way that you can accumulate them is just spam low-level Explore. Generally the easiest way to go about it, that or low-level PvP. Anyways, as far as the Soulforge this week, we have ourselves the almighty Irongut. So, of course, Irongut, one of the most sought-after first crafts in the game. Highly, highly, highly advised getting this as one of your first 3. I was going to get it as my very first when we made our Nintendo Switch account a little while back. However, he didn't actually exist at the time because it was so far back when the Switch started that it didn't actually exist yet. So we just went for Ferris Raw and then went into that. But yes, he is one of the strongest mythics to consider crafting as your very first mythic. Not only can you use him as a backup plan for things like PvP, though he will have a pretty small base attack for that. The primary reason why you get this thing is to go use it for delves. He does damage based, or he does a devour rate based on what his attack value is. And once you get a single Devour in a high-level battle, you will be at 100% Devour rate. That 100% Devour rate will devour everything at 100%, as long as it doesn't have Immune. And you can easily use a cheap Curse. There's increasingly more coming into the game. Deep Magnus was one of the most recent ones, the one yellow-purple that came 2 factions ago? 2 factions ago. So we keep getting cheaper and cheaper options to curse the entire enemy team. Of course, Mirage Queen does it pretty effectively too from Sunken Fleet that I was just mentioning earlier. Aside from its 50% elemental start, which is normally used for, it does have one of the best curses in the game with a 4x curse into Doomskull spam. But yeah, Irongut, absolutely amazing. Highly, highly advise getting this thing, especially if you're struggling with delves or you're planning on doing just progression on delves in general. It is single-handedly the best delve troop in the game. Azugoff is also technically similarly good. However, this is about 20 times easier to obtain than a Zugoff. So it's a much cheaper option that in many cases actually is stronger, at least in that context. Because biggest issue with Zugoff, particularly on like super high level delves like 400 to 500, is he can sometimes backfire because he creates skulls and then the skulls hit you back. And obviously in something like delves, you don't want to lose a single troop, ideally. And Zugoff can sometimes occasionally lose it, whereas Irongut is much safer since he becomes tankier rather than lowering your durability with skulls, potentially. So it does basically the exact inverse, which is really good. So yeah, definitely highly, 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 highly advise. If you don't have Irongut, and you have the diamonds, you should leave this week with a Irongut, as it will definitely be worth it, especially if you are in the process of getting around to delves or planning on doing delves in the very near future. So 100% make sure to get that. Speaking of things to get, Dagger of Sands, first time it's ever been available for free without the $5 thingy. So make sure to go pick that up if you're just going for completionist sake, as this is the first time it has ever been obtainable for in-game currency. Aside from that, as far as old weapons are concerned, the main thing that's down here is Doom Dax. Doom Dax is one of the 6 good Doom weapons that do full AoE damage and convert color to Doom Skull. I personally feel like it's about mid-range as far as the Doom weapons are concerned. Not the absolute best one, not the absolute worst one. This is kind of in the middle as far as the powerfulness of the 6 colored Doom weapons. Definitely worth considering if you don't have any of the 6 Doom weapons and you have the resources for it. Otherwise, it's not too big a deal if you end up skipping on it, as there are other options that exist out there that will be rotating back around that might end up being a little bit better than it, such as the green version whenever that one comes around, as well as a couple other colors. I feel like the purple one ends up working out pretty well too. Probably the best too overall. Whenever the green and purple one comes back around, not sure exactly what weeks those are. And aside from that, one of these is the Sunken Fleet weapon, and I actually completely forget which one it is. So, the easiest way to go check is to go check this faction. And, okay, it was that one. I thought it was, I just didn't know 100% for sure. So, confirmed. So, as far as weapons, there is one of them that is only available today. However, it is a pretty useless weapon, and that is the Last Harbor. It deals damage to the first enemy, boosted by Doom Skulls at a 3x boost ratio. And if the enemy is an elemental, it deals double damage, then knocks them to the last position. If that was triple damage, I would say this weapon might be okay. If it was like triple damage with extra turn, but it has neither of those two things, and for that reason, it's not really that good. Even if you're up against a pure elemental team, this will very rarely be an option you would actually want. And for that reason, you're never really going to touch this weapon. It's basically only obtained for completionist's sake. So if you don't end up getting it today, don't really worry. It is useless. The only reason you would really pick it up is if you're just trying to have every single weapon in the game. There is almost no other reason for you to get this weapon. However, it is noteworthy in that it is only available on this faction. Like every single Tuesday, there's only one weapon available that rotates around like almost half a year now with how many delves there are in the game. Gosh, it keeps getting longer and longer. I remember when it only used to take like a month or two for those to rotate, but now there's so many delves that eventually, once we have all 34 delves, yeah, that's going to take it basically only rotates about twice a year. Not even. How many weeks are in a year? Somewhere's around there. I can't do the math in my head right now. But they are starting to become very long gaps. But nonetheless, most of them are useless anyways. There's only a few really good ones like Life and Death, Jar of Eyes, and a few others here and there. But this is not one of them, so you could pretty much just ignore it. However, worth mentioning that it is only available today. Aside from that, let's go get into the teams then. I believe that's everything else. So, as far as teams are concerned, we got several to go show. We got the one that we showed earlier for the Wardlaw event, which ended up using the King Mikhail, basically any kind of King Mikhail kind of setup. Next one is a Mythic-based one, Flame of Aquaticus, Tartarus, and Flame of Anu. Figure we give Flame of Anu a little bit of opportunity to shine, as he has been pretty useless. But he does have Fairy Fire Burn. This is pretty useful when you're already doing so much spell reduction, so much spell damage, and you get additional 50%, ends up working out pretty decently. You have Tartarus, which could basically one-shot, which with this extra spell damage, that's pretty cool. and also boost based on their attack, so for the later battles would be pretty good. Quadicus does its thing, mana accumulation, a bit of chip, and with the extra spell damage does quite a bit. Also has Submerge if you end up needing it, however, that's probably a little bit less of a factor, but overall it's meant more so for the deeper end. And you also have triple damage burning, so not only can you do triple damage to the Flame of Vanu burns, but you can also back up burn off of Flamer for itself to end up doing similar. So overall, that can end up working if you don't want to go the King Mikhail route. And if you need something super cheap, Manticore or Scale Crown, Lupina Explorer, and Goblin Rocket. We're primarily using Lupina Explorer as your damage output. This thing is absolutely absurd in Arena. Had some really funny Arena drafts with this. But it has pretty good boost ratio for early to mid game if you don't really have that many options. Destroys a row and column. Knocks one of the first two enemies to the back so you can disorient them, and then ends up dealing a bunch of damage to the first two enemies, and is boosted based on green, so it can end up getting a pretty decent amount of damage in, and of course that does get increased by all of the medals that you have set, so you can end up getting even more damage for him, and he has some decent board control, and it's destroy instead of remove, so he gets to accumulate mana from it. He gets a lot of value for his ability, and on top of all that, he also has spell reduction and dodge. So he has both skull and spell survivability, which is really cool. Aside from that, Arskea Crown you obtain from doing the Arskea questline, and this ends up giving you a red spammer, kind of like Flamefer, except it also has a summon attached to it, but no damage, so that ends up working out pretty well. So if your Manticore dies, you end up getting perpetual summons. And you have Goblin Rocket here. Technically, you might end up getting 2 reds because this will end up summoning a red. However, it is your primary red here, and it'll be exploding a gem for board control and chipping them down with the extra bit of... normally, one of his biggest issues is that he doesn't do enough damage. However, during this event, when you're getting additional spell damage, that'll basically make up for his lack of damage. And yeah, you get hit pretty high. Let's say you had like a base value of like 25. And he had like 200% extra damage to him. Being able to hit for like a 60 with how easy he can cast and control the board is actually not that bad at all. The main reason he's not really used in the current state of the game is more so due to his speed, not because he is a bad troop. He's actually among one of the better troops in the entire game. He's arguably, as far as a board control option, probably one of the strongest that there are. Just because of the amount of options he has compared to everything else, due to having a 3x3 explode, which you accumulate the mana for, at least 50% of it, while also having an extra turn attached to it. And there's a lot of weird gimmicks that you can end up setting up with that, just because you get the automatic extra turn, assuming you're not frozen. Though I don't believe this event really has any freeze, haven't seen any yet, but maybe there's one lurking in there. And he also has a +1 red, so you get a mana up even easier. So ends up working out decently. So worth considering if you need super cheap options. Every single thing here is ultra rare or below, except for the crown, which you get for free. So ends up working out pretty well. Anyways, as far as the Warren's event, we do have access to blue. It's blue-red, so Forest Troll, Double Truffle, good to go. Obviously, you could use any color hero weapon, so it doesn't end up mattering what you use there. Also, you don't have to end up using Doomed Glaive. Even if you really wanted to, you could use the one that's in Soulforge right now, or just use like any kind of supporting weapon behind it. Obviously, the main gimmick is the 3 in front of it. As far as other things, one of the more meta teams is actually usable. The Mountain Crusher, High King, Irongut, Zugoff, and then one other option. That option is normally something like a Leprechaun, a Harpy Mage, a Gimlet. It really just depends how you want to play it. The specific one shows Gimlet, of course. However, there are plenty of options that you can end up putting there. Main other one being Harpy Mage. But and you probably want to move the Harpy Mage to second slot if you are going to go the Harpy Mage route, though. Worth considering. But this one's the Gimlet route, which you basically convert green to brown. Hope you land it immediately. That gives you the Mountain Crusher plus High King Irongut, and you just go crazy off of that. And the extra brown also makes it so you have more barrier spam, so your hero won't die. It also gives extra life to your hero, barrier to your hero indirectly through the brown, and enrage, so you get a lot of value from it. So it ends up working out pretty well. And of course, High King Irongut is in Soulforge this week, so we do have that as a option. One thing to consider, since we are under red-blue, if you don't have a Zugoff, you can go Apothecary and just put Apothecary in front of it and go something like Mountain Crusher, Apothecary, High King Irongut, and then just one single curse option in the back, maybe like Mirage Queen or something, as this is the place where Mirage Queen resides after all. So you can end up going down that route if you don't have the other option. Definitely worth considering. Anyways, aside from that, Pure Faction. As far as Pure Faction, you basically use Mirage Queen's slight tankiness to tank for you. You use the 50% mana start. You basically, it's a little bit risky, but you do want this Mirage Queen lasting to the final battle. Normally, you want to double up on your tank. However, there's not really enough room on this faction to double up, so you just have to bring the Mirage Queen all the way to the final battle without losing it, which can be a little bit risky, but it still ends up working out most of the time. The main gimmick here is you have double water elemental, has +2 blue on it. Your basic premise is that you want to go and gain your mana up as quickly as possible, get all your blues, keep chipping them down with AoE. It has stun attached to it too, so you could even get skull spam without needing to worry about reduction, and you're pretty much good to go there fourth. You also have convert of yellow to blue, which ends up accumulating to all of your very heavy blue using troops. And this team is actually running a +4 blue. You can say your banner's a +2, and the 2 water elementals both give a +1, all of which stacks for a 4 magic gain. I mean, for a 4 blue gain, which of course makes your blue accumulation so much easier to do. So definitely worth considering for the Pure faction if you're trying to get it done today. I actually had a lot of fun with this Pure faction when we ended up doing it way back, about a little over a year ago at this point when it came around. But it's pretty much just a chip AoE kind of faction going on. And you do have a bit of spell reduction, which ends up working out pretty well, because you have the score reduction up front with the spell reduction behind it. So overall, not too bad. Not the easiest faction, not the hardest faction. It's kind of mid-range one. And aside from that, I still have this named Knight class. However, I do have it changed to be the correct one. This is the Dervish class. It's one of the probably more useless hero class in the game. It does have a few purposes here and there. Overall, wouldn't really bother with it though. As I mentioned earlier, it does have the highest dodge in the game. But aside from that, it doesn't have too many gimmicks going for it that are that valuable. As far as what it does the black mana gold to the triple sand runner. This ends up doing the basically you chip them down with black mana gold and you clean up with sand runner. Sand runner has a 75% mana start. Would you really want to be doing too much of it? I guess just grab your main gems and get in, get out. Dervish hero class overall, not really too enticing. Has a little bit dodge, plus a 30% dodge of its trait. Has that little bit of monster bonus. Overall, its trees are okay. It does have a Cunning Tree and a Storm, which is a good combo, though it doesn't get too much off of Wind. Very rarely would you use most of those mechanics. You're primarily using the Cunning and Storms whenever you're using them. More often than not, really Suspense. But they are the primary 2 good trees that he ends up having. But overall, pretty average to slightly below average hero class. So do be mindful of that. But in that case, a lot of people probably don't have it upgraded, so at least you can get some free XP on this Thursday for it, if nothing else. But anyways, guys, I'll wrap it up for this video. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. I hope you all have a wonderful and safe Thanksgiving. That's right around the corner, and I will catch you guys later. Goodbye, everyone, and thank you all so much for watching. Enjoy the holidays.